Nebraska, a state shaped by the enduring contributions of its citizens, confronts significant challenges from non-citizens who secure employment, access public resources, and alter community structures, thereby displacing native residents with historical ties. Official estimates from the American Immigration Council indicate Nebraska's population at 1.98 million in 2025, with non-citizens constituting over 7%, approximately 140,000 to 145,000 individuals. But actual figures are much higher due to underreported, undocumented immigration. These non-citizens encompass undocumented immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, work visa holders, student visa holders, and lawful permanent residents, who leverage permissive immigration policies to compete for jobs and depress wages. Major corporations, including Tyson Foods in Lexington, JBS USA in Grand Island, and Costco in Fremont, alongside medium-sized enterprises like Glen Valley Foods in Omaha, employ non-citizens at reduced wages, prioritizing economic efficiency over native labor. Non-governmental organizations, supported by federal funding, facilitate this integration, providing legal assistance and welfare access, which diminishes resources available to Nebraskans. The demographic composition includes a majority of Hispanic individuals, primarily Mexican and Guatemalan, followed by South Asians, including Indian and Pakistani Africans such as Sudanese and Somali, and smaller groups from other regions. Non-citizens concentrate in urban centers like Omaha's South Omaha District, Lincoln, and smaller cities such as Fremont, Lexington, and Grand Island, as well as rural areas like Atkinson and North Platte, straining housing and public services. These groups, often utilizing fraudulent documentation or legal pathways like asylum work permits, secure employment in industries critical to Nebraska's economy, appropriating opportunities from native workers. Non-governmental organizations, such as the Center for Immigrant and Refugee Advancement and Catholic Charities, enable this process, diverting community support from Nebraskans. This report analyzes the definitions and entry methods of non-citizens, the industries and businesses employing them, their demographic profile and settlement patterns, their use of welfare and community resources, and the broader economic and social consequences for Nebraskans, emphasizing the inequity faced by residents with deep-rooted connections to the state. Part 1. Immigration statuses and entry methods. Non-citizens in Nebraska comprise distinct immigration categories, each defined by legal status and entry pathways, yet all contribute to the appropriation of jobs and resources from native residents. Undocumented immigrants, officially estimated at 45,000 to 50,000, but likely higher, lack legal authorization to reside or work in the United States. They enter primarily through unauthorized border crossings, facilitated by lax enforcement under prior administrations, or by overstaying temporary visas. They travel to Nebraska via commercial buses or private vehicles, drawn to employment opportunities at Tyson Foods in Lexington and Glen Valley Foods in Omaha, often using fraudulent identification to secure work, thereby displacing Nebraskan workers. Refugees, numbering 10,000 to 15,000, are admitted legally through the U.S. Refugee Admissions Program after vetting for persecution claims, often criticized as pretextual. Resettlement agencies such as Lutheran Family Services arrange their arrival via flights to Omaha and Lincoln, placing them in jobs at JBS USA in Grand Island, reducing opportunities for locals. Asylum seekers, a subset of refugees, enter legally at ports of entry or illegally, applying for work authorization after 150 days, enabling employment at Costco in Fremont and other businesses competing with Nebraskans. Work visa holders include H-2A workers for agriculture, H-2B for non-agricultural roles, and H-1B for skilled professions sponsored by employers like Tyson Foods and Nebraska Medicine in Omaha. They arrive through employer-coordinated transportation, occupying roles that native workers could fill. Student visa holders, estimated at 5,000 to 10,000, enter legally for study at institutions like the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, securing on-campus jobs that local students could perform. lawful permanent residents, and temporary protected status holders, totaling 20,000 to 30,000, enter through family, employment, or diversity visas, working at Chi Health in Omaha and other firms, diminishing local job prospects. These legal pathways, including deferred action for childhood arrivals, enable non-citizens to integrate into Nebraska's economy, appropriating employment and resources intended for Native residents, facilitated by organizations like the Center for Immigrant and Refugee Advancement. Part 2. Industries and businesses employing non-citizens. Non-citizens dominate Nebraska's labor-intensive industries, securing employment at the expense of Native workers and depressing wages through acceptance of lower compensation. The meatpacking and agriculture sector is the primary employer, with major corporations exploiting non-citizens for economic gain. Tyson Foods, with facilities in Lexington and Madison, employs undocumented immigrants, refugees, and H-2A workers for meat processing and farm work, offering substandard wages. JBS USA in Grand Island hires refugees and undocumented workers, while Costco's poultry plant in Fremont employs H-2A workers and undocumented individuals, some exposed in immigration and customs enforcement raids. Medium-sized Glen Valley Foods in Omaha raided in June 2025 for employing undocumented workers with fraudulent identification, and Christensen Farms in Atkinson, targeted in 2018, prioritized cost savings over Native labor. Sustainable Beef in North Platte, O'Neill Ventures, Elkhorn River Farms and Herd Company. Cattle Company in O'Neill and Bartlett hire similar groups, reducing opportunities for Nebraskans. The manufacturing sector employs non-citizens at Kawasaki Motors in Lincoln, hiring lawful permanent residents, refugees, and undocumented workers with forged documents, roles that Nebraskans could fill at competitive wages. In hospitality, national chains like McDonald's, Taco Bell, Wendy's, and Burger King in Omaha and Lincoln employ undocumented workers and refugees, while hotels such as Hilton, Marriott, and Holiday Inn in Omaha hire H-2B workers. Medium-sized restaurants, including La Choza and El Alamo in South Omaha, reportedly pay undocumented workers in cash, appropriating jobs from locals. Construction firms like Rabfac Construction and Kiewit Corporation in Omaha employ H-2B workers and undocumented laborers, offering below-market rates. Healthcare employs non-citizens at Nebraska Medicine, Chi Health, and Methodist Hospital in Omaha, with H-1B physicians and refugee aides taking roles suitable for Nebraskans. The education and technology sector sees the University of Nebraska in Lincoln and Omaha hiring F-1 students, while Mutual of Omaha, First National Bank, and PayPal in Omaha employ H-1B tech workers, displacing local graduates. These businesses exploit non-citizens' willingness to accept reduced wages, as evidenced by the Glen Valley Foods raid, diminishing economic opportunities for Nebraskans and prioritizing corporate interests over community welfare. Part 3. Demographics and settlement patterns. Non-citizens in Nebraska, a diverse population, reshape the state's demographic landscape, competing with Native residents for resources and altering community structures. Official estimates indicate a majority of Hispanic individuals, primarily Mexican and Guatemalan, followed by South Asians, including Indian and Pakistani Africans such as Sudanese and Somali, and smaller groups from Middle Eastern and European origins, with actual numbers likely higher due to underreporting. Undocumented immigrants constitute the largest cohort, followed by lawful permanent residents, refugees, work visa holders, and student visa holders. Most are working age, with smaller proportions of children and elderly, and education levels range from limited schooling among undocumented immigrants to college degrees among students and permanent residents. Settlement patterns concentrate non-citizens in areas with economic opportunities, straining local resources. Omaha hosts the majority, particularly in the South Omaha district, where undocumented immigrants, refugees, and students near the University of Nebraska-Omaha and Creighton University compete for housing and services. Lincoln attracts students and refugees, impacting university neighborhoods and schools. Smaller cities like Fremont, Lexington, and Grand Island draw non-citizens to meatpacking plants operated by Tyson Foods, JBS USA, and Costco, altering small-town cohesion. Rural areas, including Atkinson and North Platte, see non-citizens near farms and facilities like Sustainable Beef, competing for rural employment. Other counties experience a smaller but notable presence, spreading the impact across Nebraska. Non-citizens enabled by policies such as deferred action for childhood arrivals and asylum work permits lack historical ties to Nebraska, unlike residents with generational roots. Their presence in South Omaha, Fremont, and rural towns burden schools with thousands of non-citizen children and housing markets, reducing availability for Nebraskans. Organizations like the Center for Immigrant and Refugee Advancement and Catholic Charities facilitate this settlement, providing housing and job support, which prioritizes non-citizens over native residents, undermining the cultural integrity of communities established by Nebraskan families. Part 4. Welfare usage and subversive networks. Non-citizens in Nebraska utilize welfare and community resources, diverting support from native residents with long-standing ties to the state. Official estimates suggest a significant portion access benefits, with actual numbers likely higher due to unreported usage. Undocumented immigrants ineligible for federal programs like SNAP and Medicaid obtain emergency Medicaid and benefits through U.S. citizen children, such as school lunches, reducing resources for Nebraskan families. Refugees receive refugee cash assistance, Medicaid, and SNAP, facilitated by Lutheran Family Services in Omaha and Lincoln. Lawful permanent residents and temporary protected status holders access Medicaid and SNAP after a 5-year eligibility period, competing with citizens for limited funds. Asylum seekers and visa holders utilize local aid, further straining community resources. Non-governmental organizations exacerbate this utilization, prioritizing non-citizens over Nebraskans. The Center for Immigrant and Refugee Advancement in Omaha provides legal assistance, job placement, and social services to undocumented immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers, enabling access to benefits and employment. Lutheran Family Services assists refugees with housing, jobs at JBS USA, and Medicaid enrollment, diverting public funds from citizens. Catholic Charities of Omaha offers food, clothing, and legal aid without verifying immigration status, diminishing support for local families. Nebraska Appleseed advocates for immigrant access to benefits, including professional licenses for deferred action for childhood arrivals recipients, equipping non-citizens to compete with Nebraskans. The Heartland Workers Center in South Omaha trains immigrants for employment, further displacing locals. Local churches in South Omaha provide shelter and food, enabling non-citizens to establish roots at the expense of native residents. These organizations, supported by federal grants from agencies like the Office of Refugee Resettlement, sustain operations by facilitating non-citizen integration, which critics argue prioritizes foreign interests over Nebraskans. Businesses like Tyson Foods, Glen Valley Foods, and Kiewit Corporation collude with these networks, hiring non-citizens with fraudulent documentation, as seen in immigration and customs enforcement raids, to exploit lower wages. The Nebraska Alliance for Thriving Communities, including the Nebraska Chamber of Commerce, advocates for increased immigration, aligning with corporate interests over local workers, undermining the economic and social stability of Nebraskan communities. Conclusion: non-citizens in Nebraska, including undocumented immigrants, refugees, asylum seekers, and visa holders, appropriate employment opportunities depress wages and strain community resources, undermining the economic and social stability of native residents with generational ties. Major corporations such as Tyson Foods in Lexington, JBS USA in Grand Island, and Costco in Fremont, alongside medium-sized businesses like Glen Valley Foods in Omaha, Christensen Farms in Atkinson, and O'Neill Ventures, hire non-citizens for reduced wages, exploiting their status to prioritize profit over Nebraskan workers. Hospitality chains including McDonald's, Taco Bell, Hilton, and Marriott in Omaha, and construction firms like Rabfac Construction and Kiewit Corporation employ undocumented workers and visa holders, reducing job prospects for locals. Healthcare providers Nebraska Medicine and Chi Health and technology firms like Mutual of Omaha and PayPal hire non-citizens in roles that Nebraskans could fill with equitable compensation. Non-governmental organizations, including the Center for Immigrant and Refugee Advancement, Lutheran Family Services, and Catholic Charities, supported by federal funding, facilitate this influx by providing legal assistance, housing, and job placement, diverting resources from Nebraskan families. Welfare utilization by non-citizens, particularly refugees and permanent residents, diminishes public funds available to citizens, while undocumented immigrants exploit loopholes, further burdening the system. The settlement of non-citizens in Omaha, Lincoln, Fremont, and rural areas alters historic communities, straining schools and housing markets. Permissive policies such as asylum work permits and deferred action for childhood arrivals enable this integration, while organizations like the Nebraska Alliance for Thriving Communities promote immigration, prioritizing corporate interests over Nebraskans. Stricter enforcement measures in 2025, including immigration and customs enforcement raids and Legislative Bill 532, address this issue but fall short of restoring the economic and cultural integrity of Nebraska's communities, which demands comprehensive measures to prioritize Native residents.